But for right now, we're going to talk about the Houston Rockets. Me personally, I feel like they may have had just quietly probably like the definitive best offseason. I understand Boston made some huge moves, but they also lost a really important guy. They gained Drew Holiday, though, so it's kind of the jury's still out. We understand Dame Lillard went to the Bucks, but they did lose Drew Holiday, and so the defenses look tough, and Dame is getting his offense back together, and so that kind of remains to be seen. But the Houston Rockets, one, they hired Ime Udoka. Mm-hmm. And last year, and this is no disrespect to Steven Silas, but I just feel like he wasn't the right coach for that group necessarily. Yeah. Like a young coach and a young team just doesn't really gel anyway. You kind of need somebody who has experience to kind of lead and guide those guys. So you bring in Ime Udoka, you bring in Fred VanVleet, championship point guard. He struggled last year, but we know what he's capable of fully. They bring in Jeff Green, who won a championship with the Nuggets last year, still going, drafted the same class since KD. So I'm assuming he's like 35 years old, somewhere around here. 37. Still 37 years old, still tough, still defending, still dunking on people, ridiculous. But the main person I want to talk about on the Houston Rockets is Alperen Sengun. He's somebody, he got on my radar already last year, just watching those teams, because it was frustrating watching them not necessarily move the ball the way they should have. They had a lot of talent, a lot of guys who could score, but there's a lot of isolation, a lot of just dysfunction in a sense in the offense. And I'm like, wait, you got this guy right here who can really pass the ball, who can really play make, who has the court vision. You should really be going to him. And so I'm going to go around to y'all first. I have a lot to say on that topic and specifically Sengun, but I kind of want to know what y'all think about this Rockets team first.
So starting off with this Rockets team, man, like you stated, it not only is it like a personnel, like, like new players coming in, it's a whole culture switch.
Yeah.
And another player, you didn't mention was Dillon Brooks, somebody like Dillon Brooks.
I want to get to him too.
So it's basically they brought in people who are like, we've won, maybe not a chip, but we've won, and this is what it takes to do that. Are you guys willing to do that? Yes, or you can leave. And they started cleaning house, and it's just functioned very well, man. Sengun specifically, they've given him a way bigger role offensively, way more spaced 1 and 5 pick and rolls, because last year with Kevin Porter Jr. and even with Jalen Green, still the pacing isn't there for Sengun, so VanVleet kind of matches his pace in these, and he's able to function as just a short roll guy. He can roll all the way to the rim. He can just a hub offensively, dribble handoffs, everything, and he's doing everything that he was doing last year, but just on another tier of efficiency. So the offense is really, really taken off, and surprisingly, they're playing very, very slow, which is not something that I would have expected when I saw this team, but it's making sense. They're being more organized, I think, is the key word. Doesn't feel so crazy like it was last year. And Sengun is just, him and VanVleet, man, have just taken the pace of this team and have just like settled them down. And they're above 500. I think they won like 6 out of their last like 8 games or something like that. Like they've been playing really, really well. So
so I definitely want to get to that VanVleet and Sengun duo, but first I'm gonna go to Frankie or what he's seen from this team so far.
I just want to highlight Sengun, his improvement. His defense has taken a step in the right direction. Udoka, he's like undoubtedly one of the best coaches in the league, like from the get-go. Really take his team as his first year to the finals. Just a nightmare to watch. As a coach of the Celtics, as a Heat fan, I hated them having a really good coach that I respected. Won't talk about what he did to lose that job, but
we're gonna leave that.
He's I'm really happy Milwaukee didn't hire him. Let's just say that. But first he's been a big factor in getting the right guys, the right vets around them. Sengun's also improved a lot, like Lou was saying. His twos, he's shooting 63% from twos. That's up from 57 last year. His post-ups are more efficient. He was in the 63rd percentile last year. Now he's 77th percentile. His fouls are down despite playing 3 more minutes.
That's crucial
per game. He's no Jaren Jackson. His net rating was negative 7.36 last year. It's a positive 5.01 right now on the floor. He's, defense ratings it's a messy stat for individual players.
Yeah.
But, like a lot of people like to hear it. It was 116 with him on the floor last year, 107 right now. He's just improved a lot. His box outs are up 0.5. It was 0.5 for offense, 1.2 for this year, 1.4 to 2.5 on defense this year. He's just made a lot of strides in the right direction. His shooting is still iffy, but he makes up so much for it with the playmaking, with the scoring. Yeah. I love the Fred VanVleet setting screens for him and him getting to the cup and the spins, and he's exciting. They're a lot of fun to watch. I'm really intrigued on them finding the right continuing to work, gel with the roster, find the right youth around them. I really like the Reggie Bullock, Jacques Landale additions. Aaron Holiday is a sneaky veteran, 27 years old. I've always really liked him and I wish he found the right home. And he's playing pretty solid for them. So I like a lot of the stuff they did.
And so the reason I pointed out Alperen Sengun as this team's X factor, even last year, and wanted him to get more involved in the offense, is he brings something to the game that's starting to come back, but was gone for probably a good decade. Just somebody who can operate out of the post, whether it's scoring or passing. Mm-hmm. That's because I started watching basketball at a very young age. So I remember Chris Webber and Vlade Divac and those teams out in Sacramento. And I just couldn't really understand at times why this went away, because what happened is you took away the post game and now you have to rely to be able to force help and bend the defense. You have to rely on downhill attacks. And even if you get a screen, you're not just screening Drew Holiday easily. You're not just screening Marcus Smart easily. And so you're kind of just gambling on that in a sense. And it did work, but then it became switch heavy also. So then you stop yourself that way. And it's a lot you don't necessarily have to deal with if you just have somebody who can dunk the ball to. And they still draw the same defenders the same way. The same defenders still have to make a decision. If you got a guy in the corner, he may have to leave his guy or just decide to stay home and just let the guy you're posting up deal with it. If you send a double, that's a big mistake because you're just going to hit whoever's open. And so credit to Alperen Sengun for that. Also, the Fred VanVleet, Alperen Sengun duo, like Lou said, with Sengun in the short roll, I think one thing we kind of think about with rollers, and specifically in a short roll, is just getting a quick shot off. But when you have somebody who can play make also, when you've already bent the defense with the pick and roll, and then you get the ball to him on a short roll, and you make the next move have to be some help or whatever it is, and then they can make the extra pass, it just unlocks so much for an offense. And then, now granted, they don't have a bunch of shooting on that team, like catch and shoot necessarily. Right. Jalen Green's still pretty inefficient, but that's just watching it, just more so him kind of rushing still. If I was athletic, I'd have a problem slowing down too. I'm going to be completely honest. So I can't blame him for it. And also, he's just very young, and I feel like we kind of forget how we see these phenoms and high draft picks. We don't understand they're still 18, 19 when they come into the league. And so it's still – back in the day, they would have been in college still developing their game and not ready for the league. And so I don't blame Jalen Green for that, but I will say if he starts to kind of be a little more efficient, this Rockets team could go from surprisingly good to pretty almost dangerous.
Yeah. Their young guys in general have looked really, really good. But like you said, not to the tier to make him dangerous yet. But Green has had moments where he's improved. Sometimes he, against specifically in that Clippers game that they just played in the tournament, he was kind of rushed at times, and it kind of just didn't feel like he knew when, the spacing aspect, where to attack. He needs to get better with those things. But a guy speaking of young guys, man, a guy that I'm just thrilled, and he just, came back to the team now after injury, Tari Eason.
Oh my God. Yeah.
My goodness gracious, man. This guy is a perennial shit talker. And I love it. I love every ounce of hustle he brings, his size, switchability. He literally goes out there and he doesn't care if he was guarding 1 through 5, just offensive rebounding, just reckless at all times in the best way possible. And it's like you've stated, it's a lot of pieces, and now they're really meshing. Jabari Smith was another guy who you can really see. It's funny because I'm the draft guy, so I love all these rookies. And Jabari Smith, my comp to him was like, eventually who you want him to turn into is a 6'10" Klay Thompson. Prime Klay Thompson, obviously. Maybe if the shooting ever gets there. But I'm just saying, because he's a movement shooter. I know his shooting has been kind of iffy, but he's a very good defender as well. I know his fouls are a little high right now, but these kind of things, you pair them alongside Sengun, who's not a great defender, Tari, who is a great defender. Even though Sengun's improved, like, you make his job easier with these guys. Once Amen comes back, like, I mean, like him and his twin, all they know how to do is play defense. So it's just, it makes Sengun's life, like, you're the hub offensively, kind of like what Jokic is over there. Like, they paired him with a bunch of with a bunch of defensive players and off-ball movers or shooters, and you happen to have a great offense, and the team's a problem. I think the Rockets in a couple years' time wouldn't shock me. It wouldn't shock me this year if they make it past the first round in the playoffs.
Yeah, and you did kind of we kind of glossed over Dillon Brooks, and I understand he's made himself a meme lately. Like, there's no way around that. Like, he just talks a lot of shit. He didn't show for the press conferences. He said the thing about LeBron, and LeBron cooked him. But my thing about that is, if LeBron cooking you as a standard for you being a good player, nobody's good, because it's LeBron at the end of the day. But I watched specifically that game against the Pelicans, I want to say, where he played great defense all game, but in the fourth quarter, while they were coming back, he kind of took that game over on that end. And he reminds me a lot of, like, the great defenders. Like, I'm not putting him on a tier with these guys, but his main attribute on defense is something that Dennis Rodman had, something that Ron Artest had. Not just physicality for the sake of physicality, because that could lead to a lot of fouls. It's leveraging physicality to where he will bump you with his chest in a way that's not necessarily a foul. And as soon as you retaliate, as soon as you bump him back, he won't necessarily flop, but he is willing to take the charge. Just playing those, like, there's so much that goes into defense that's just so far beyond just slide your feet and stop him from scoring. It's just, there's so much mental stuff. There's so much film that needs to be studied. And you can really tell Dillon Brooks puts the time in the film room and learning guys' tendencies. And like what he did to Zion Williamson in that fourth quarter, or really that game kind of in general, defensively, you see why he was all defense, and you can see why he talks the way he talks. Not only to get into opponents' heads, but just if you can play defense that well, you have the right to talk in a sense. And you also kind of have to have what people refer to with offensive scorers as irrational confidence. Because you got to think about, one night you're guarding LeBron, the next night you're guarding Paul George. During that game, you may have to guard Kawhi Leonard. The next game, you might have to chase Klay Thompson around there. Steph is hot, and the coach is like, all right, you know what? Guard Steph now. It's just like night after night, you're going against these elite players offensively. It's the NBA already, so everybody's tough. But you're going against these superstars, Hall of Famers every night. You have to really believe in your mind, like, okay, I'm locking that shit up tonight. And so I'm not really mad at Dillon Brooks for the talking. For me, it's just entertaining at this point. But I will say he's able to back it up, to be completely honest.
And he's a fun villain. The Clippers game the other day, getting into it with Russ. And Russ getting the breakaway dunk and putting his hand in his face. That picture is hilarious. I'm not even a huge Russ fan, but that I'm saving that picture and putting it as my wallpaper. I hate Dillon Brooks that much. But it's just that, he has that tenacity on defense that you mentioned, the irrational confidence. You do need that on the defensive end to believe you can match up with these guys, and you're on that level of those guys. And he does that a lot of times undersized compared to the guys he's guarding. He's guarding up on the wings a lot, sizing up on big fours, and doing a really great job defensively. And he's a big reason why they've been really solid this year. And I can't wait for Amen to get back, because he's special. Tari's like the ultimate glue guy with their team, and there's still so much more this team could be. I'm really excited to watch. And Jalen, we've kind of glossed over Jalen a little bit. I know you mentioned him a little bit, Kenny, but this is, when you talked about the Silas, just how it was like a substitute teacher year round. And now you got the fucking drill sergeant, Udoka, coming in. So he's got to adjust to that, learn how to play within structure and a completely different culture and setting. So there's growing pains and stuff, but I think he's just so talented that he has to make it work, man. He has to make it work. That 2-point percentage is scary right now for him, for the kind of athlete he is and talent he is, but he's 21 years old. Like, we forget that all the time.
Yeah. And the thing I do want to say about Jalen Green before we kind of move on is the reason I'm not mad at him right now about his inefficiency is with these like superstar players growing up, they've been the man their whole lives. And so especially like we've seen like AAU, I believe y'all both coached at one point. There's not much structure. And so you obviously first couple years, like he's playing the same way, and that just doesn't work in the NBA. And now he has this very structured coach running this very strict offense with a championship point guard and all this. So Jalen Green's kind of doing something new in a sense.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm not necessarily mad at him for not really being efficient right now. He will eventually kind of fit in, but I think this is going to take time. I feel like he's too talented for it not to work. It's just going to take some time because it's all new to him.
For sure. Sorry, Lou. I just want to say his true shooting percentage is at 54%, and that's got to get better. If you want to be a star guy, I think that's right below league average. If I'm it's like 55 or 56%, something like that, and he's right below it either way. So he's got to be better. So, go ahead, Lou.
No, I was gonna say, to Kenny's point, I think they've only played like 12, 13 games. Like, this is completely new to him. He's never had a guy that has orchestrated an offense to this level. I mean, for God's sake, their point guard before was Kevin Porter Jr., who's not really a point guard.
He got a whole bunch of other stuff going. I don't even want to get into that.
But that's what I'm saying. Now he has not just one, he has 2 point guards once a man comes back, and they can different tempos, they can play differently. I think what's something that's truly special is the way that their defense can be versatile. When Sengun's off the floor, they switched everything as Jeff Green and Tari Eason came back, and they had 2 6'8" lengthy dudes along with Deshaun Tate. Like, they're just causing havoc and stuff. And I think eventually he will, Jalen Green was the second overall pick for a reason. The guy, he wasn't drafted because he can defend. He was drafted because his upside was 30 points a game.
Yeah.
So just give him some time. He's 22 years old, man. He'll be fine. This team will be better.
And he shows the flashes. And so
for sure.
I think that's going to become, especially with people setting the table for him, like Fred VanVleet, like Alperen Sengun, like Amin Thompson, when he comes back, he'll be perfectly fine. And he's been off ball more. I don't know have the numbers on that, but he's been off the ball a lot more this season, just from me watching. That's what the eye test is telling me. I don't have no proof, like I said. But once that adjustment happens, we're going to really see a different Jalen Green, a different Houston Rockets.